If you ask a person to name a sports car brand, there'll be a high chance they'll say Ferrari. But how did Ferrari become so popular? How did Ferrari become the brand it now is? For that, we go back to the year 1898 to a small town named Modena, Italy. In 1898, a boy named Enzo Ferrari was born. He was the son of Alfredo Ferrari and Adalgisa Bisbina. His father owned an at-home workshop where he fabricated metal parts. The young Enzo helped work in his father's workshop and grew up with little education. But little Enzo knew what he wanted to be when he was older, a racing driver. Enzo witnessed Felice Nazzaro win the 1908 Circuito di Bologna. This race inspired Ferrari to become a racing driver himself. But first the world was in peril. World War I was happening and Ferrari served in Italian service. During this war, his father and older brother, both named Alfredo, died as a result of the flu outbreak in 1916. Enzo also became very sick and was discharged of Italian service because of his health. But after the war was over, Ferrari still wanted to be a racing driver. He started looking for jobs and applied to Fiat, but got rejected. Instead, he became a test driver for CMN, a car manufacturer which rebuilt used truck bodies into small passenger cars. He was later promoted to race car driver and his first competitive race was in the 1990 Parma Poggio di Becceto hill climb, where he finished 4th in a 2.3 litre 4-cylinder CMN. His race career had started. Things were moving up in the world and so was Enzo. In 1920 Ferrari joined the racing department of Alfa Romeo, who were dominating racing at that moment. With Alfa, he won his first race in 1923 and won 3 more races in the next year. But racing was a dangerous sport back then, and because of the deaths of fellow racing drivers, Ferrari wasn't driving as serious as before. And after the birth of his son Alfredo in 1932, Ferrari retired from motor racing and decided to focus on managing and developing the Alfa Romeo racing cars. He named the team Scuderia Ferrari, a name that would become very famous and is still being used by the Ferrari F1 racing team. On these cars, the prancing horse emblem started to appear, which he got from the mother of World War I pilot Francesco Baracca. During World War I, Francesco was shot down, and in memory of his death, Ferrari used the emblem on the Alfa racing cars, but would become the emblem of Ferrari cars. After the dissolving of Scuderia Ferrari in 1937, Ferrari started working again for Alfa, but after disagreement between him and management, Ferrari left just 2 years later and founded Auto Avione Costruzioni, a company that supplied parts for the racing teams. In World War II, the factory was bombed and Ferrari moved to Maranello. After the war, in 1947, Ferrari founded Ferrari SPA. The Ferrari brand was born. In 1948, Ferrari started open-wheel racing, and already in that same year, the first victory was in Lago di Garda. His first major victory was at the 1949 24 Hours of Le Mans, with a Ferrari 166 MM. Just 1 year after starting his own team, a major accomplishment. In 1950, Ferrari joined the New Drivers' World Championship, later known as Formula 1. Ferrari is the only team that races in Formula 1 from start to present day. But Ferrari is more than a racing team. In order to finance that racing team, Ferrari started making and selling sports cars, something Ferrari does to this day. Although the Ferrari 125S was the first proper Ferrari, the Ferrari 166 Inter was the first road-going sports car of the company, a Grand Tourer to be precise. Thanks to continued participation in Mille Miglia, a 1,000-mile race held in Italy every year, Ferrari won more races and gave the brand increased recognition. Many of Ferrari's greatest race successes came at Le Mans, 9 victories including 6 in a row from 1960 till 1965, and titles in Formula 1 in 1952, 53, 56 and more. The Ferrari F1 team currently has 16 constructor titles and 15 driver titles in F1, the most of any F1 team. Unfortunately, with the racing also came disaster. In the 1957 Mille Miglia, a Ferrari 335S blew a tire while driving at 250 km an hour. Because of non-existing crowd protection, the car would kill 9 spectators and the driver and co-driver. Among the spectators were 5 children. Ferrari and the tire manufacturer Engelbert were charged with manslaughter, and after a lengthy criminal prosecution, the case was dismissed in 1961. Because of this horrible accident, the Italian government banned open street racing. And more was going wrong for Ferrari. By the end of the 1960s, Ferrari was forced to look for a business partner. This was due to financial difficulties, but also due to new safety and emission regulations. In 1969, Ferrari sold 50% of his company to Fiat. The only caveat was that Ferrari would remain 100% control over the racing division. Ford was also given the opportunity to buy 50%, but that deal collapsed because Ford would not let Ferrari keep full control over the racing activities. Thanks to this, the world witnessed one of the fiercest rivalries in motorsport. Ford vowed to build a race car that would beat the mighty Ferraris at Le Mans. And so they did. The next years, Ferrari's teams had ups and downs. They won races and titles, but also had a few low points. In 1983, Ferrari would witness the last Constructors' Championship for his team, because until his death in 1988, Scuderia Ferrari would not win any F1 titles again. A few weeks after his death, F1 was at Circuit di Monza, where Ferrari would finish a very fitting 1-2. The only race McLaren did not win that year. Coincidence? I don't think so. But it was a tribute to their owner and founding father. After his death, the Scuderia remained successful in Formula 1 and other racing categories, picking up multiple titles, most notably the 5 F1 driver titles in a row with Michael Schumacher. Since his death, the Ferrari car brand grew bigger and bigger. To this day, Ferrari produced sports cars with pinnacles of engineering like the F40, Enzo Ferrari and Ferrari LaFerrari. The main focus of Ferrari is still building sports cars, although they are building an SUV these days, like every car company. Ferrari only call it a higher, wider and heavier sports car, not an SUV. But it still is an SUV, sorry Ferrari. Enzo Ferrari unfortunately isn't with us anymore, but thanks to him the world has seen one of the biggest and most renowned sports car brand the world has ever known. Grazie Enzo.